Howdy, how you going? I've really wanted to talk about the new Steven Universe Season 5 episodes. Some have been, really interesting, some have been kind of average to me. They've talked about some really new interesting topics and stuff that, they've never really covered before. And it's not as crazy to me personally as a Steven Bond, like there was so many revelations in that, obviously, when they went to Homeworld. But yeah, I thought I'd go through a little bit of each one and just my general thoughts. I'll just quickly have the text file up just to talk. Okay, so Dewey wins. Just have a reminder of my notes. I might occasionally look at the text file. Dewey wins, I thought, was really interesting because, it shows a side of Steven I actually didn't really like, and I didn't know what to think of it at first. I was just like, why is he supporting Dewey anyway? Because he should be able to see that Dewey is, very much doing the wrong thing by the city and doesn't have any care for the townspeople. And, yeah, I found that was the first thing kind of struck me the most about this episode, is just like, but he does kind of explain at the end when Dewey steps down, I did the right thing, I was doing the right thing. And Steven says, well, it hurt me though, even though it was the right thing to do, it hurt me, and then he kind of comes to the revelation that is how he hurt Connie, and that was one of those moments actually that I actually stopped for a moment. Sometimes, you'll have, be watching a cartoon you really like or something, or a movie or something, you'll stop and say, whoa, and you'll just frame back a little bit and listen to the message again, and you're just like, wow, huh, and sometimes I've had those moments more often than any other cartoon I can think of in Steven Universe, where I'll stop and go back and think over it. Like, yeah, because I think a lot of us do have those moments with friends or family or loved ones or so on and so forth, where we'll do something we don't really want to do by them, but need to do we think it's the right thing to do, so we do it. And I think that certainly happens to a lot of us, and in this case, I think Connie overreacted a little bit personally. I think, when I see, because it was a high-stress situation, and, and I didn't like how Steven acted when he was basically the martyr, because basically Connie is upset over Steven throughout this new Steven Universe episode set, as you probably know, by the fact that he left for Homeworld and didn't bother asking Connie or didn't bother trying to team up and fight or anything like that. He just gave himself up, and I didn't like that either, that he did that. It was very sort of martyr, and we've kind of seen that before ages back in the episode We Need to Talk, and it's a side of Steven he's slowly grown out of, and this was kind of that last growing curve, I think, where he realized, oh, that was a really dumb move. Well, it's noble, and I guess it was the right thing to do, but it also felt, I don't know, the way he did it, it didn't really sit right with me. So yeah, there was a lot I thought about in Dewey Wins, and another really cool thing is that I think the minor characters, I remember just like a few months, 6 months back, I was complaining that the minor characters, I wasn't a big fan of some of the minor characters, and they fleshed them out in the new series, and they've made them less kind of, I don't know, in your face. Maybe it's the distinct lack of Ronaldo beyond text messages, but I really am feeling better about the minor characters now, which is good. Obviously they're still no gems, but yeah, so that was my overall thoughts of Dewey Wins. I love that Dewey had a turnaround at the end, because by the end I was like, oh, I hate this mayor. This guy is doesn't give a stuff, completely oblivious, yet Steven's still supporting him, but obviously that led to the turnaround. So yeah, I liked that episode overall. But there is one thing going on, I've got to say, before I go on. We're all thinking the same thing. You just discovered you can revive the dead by crying, Steven. You're not going to talk about this with the gems? This is a massive discovery. You could go around to graveyards and cry on people and possibly reanimate them. And we're not discussing this. You just went through an interdimensional portal through your lion to the alien world you guys have been worrying and that's been trying to consume you, your world for the past several years. we're not going to go back. And like, obviously, I know Lion is gone, but it feels like a flimsy pretense that Lion's disappeared with Connie, so he can't get back, and like, he hasn't talked about this, and we've just kind of disappeared from that topic, and I'm just like, that was such a revelation! We got another 5 episodes and we know nothing more about that situation. If they at least said, huh, that happened. I mean, the best we got was, they're never gonna let me out of their sight again. All the stuff that happened, I love those first 5 episodes. It's like, and I want to know more about why all that's happening, and I guess that's the cliffhanger. It's the cliffhanger that, in this new 5 episodes, it is very much feeling like we're reaching the end, and I'm sad about that. The idea that we might be reaching the end of Steven Universe finally after 5 seasons, because I don't regret a single season. I can't look back on this series, and I know there have been meh episodes all the way through, but overall, this series has been such an experience for me. I have grown, this channel has grown, it has helped define my character by watching this series over the last several years, and it's just, oh my gosh, I've so much praise to talk about in this series, and it's so sad to see what I think is ending. It might not be, it'd be wonderful it's not ending. I'm sorry, I guess this is my fanboying out when I do this. But anyway, so Dewey wins. I really like that episode. Raising the Barn, episode 6. So basically, Lapis leaves, and obviously Peridot is pretty devastated. And what I like about this episode is that there's this very clear feel that Peridot and Lapis are a couple, and even in the way he says things like Peridot says things like she needs consistency. It very much feels like Peridot, I'm trying to think of whether to say he or she. I kind of think Peridot is kind of a he, but you know, they're all gems. Peridot says she needs consistency. She feels like kind of the I don't want to say alpha of the couple. That sounds so, I don't know, genderist, sexist. But anyway, feels like Peridot kind of fills the boots and realizes Lapis's trauma and that sort of thing. And I think it's really beautiful. And it very much feels like a couple in that way, and in the same way, he is devastated. Okay, I'm just going to call Peridot he, because that's the first thing that comes to mind. Zim, technically. And you can sort of see it throughout the episode, and it was probably the least memorable of the episodes for me, because it basically feels like they're just faffing around while Lapis decides whether to leave or not, whether Peridot can tell them, and it's got a good message, you know, be upfront and be transparent with your partners, which is so important. And like in basic social psychology, we often like find out statistically some of the most common causes of couple mishaps is a lack of transparency. And yeah, and it can be ugly, but you still have to talk to the loved ones, family, friends about these things. You got to be transparent. I shouldn't just say couples, families and friends as well. It applies to everyone. In most cases, you know, obviously use a pinch of salt. But, yeah, so there was less to talk about in Raising the Barn. Gemcation. This is the one that is basically all over YouTube, I'm finding. You know, I think Roundtables just did a review on it. There's been a lot of social media posts on it. And I guess it's because so much happened. The episode basically is so relatable. I think to most people, anyone who's been in a relationship in modern society, who is just broken up or something like that, and is waiting, or even a blind date, you know, when you're waiting for that text message, and you're just like, oh, and you get a text message like, oh, here it is, and it'll be from someone else, some random, I don't know, the blood donor organization, or just some random telemarketer, and it's like, you're not Ali, you're not even literate. And it's very much that case here where he's going, just grieving and struggling and saying, what did I do wrong? And that thought cycle that goes through your head, and it's very much there for Steven, and you can see it. And technically they're friends, I know, yeah, friends. But we all feel the same way, and this is very much represented as though they're a couple. and it's very much feels like they're a couple, a romantic couple, breaking up in this, and he's trying to think of what she's thinking in her head and all those sort of things, and very much what I think happens in a loving couple, I should say. When each person really cares about each other, that might go through their heads. And I love that Greg tries to, get Steven out of his slump. The gems come along. It feels a little bit like basically the same thing they did when they all went to the motel. Garnet went to the motel with Steven and Greg. Except this time very much Steven's the one that's struggling, and they go for reception at the end. It's like, oh, I've got to find out if she messaged me, and I love that ending because that sometimes feels like to many of us that is exactly what happens. We'll be waiting for a message, and it'll be something completely unrelated, like I've just got to let it go, and that's the message at the end there. I've got to let go, and it's beautiful and so just gorgeous message about not just couples but grieving and all these other sort of things where you've just got to stop and let's say, geez, and I know it seems maybe to some it seems cliche that they keep saying, oh geez, what beautiful scenery around us, but it's saying something very powerful which is prominent throughout all of Steven Universe, which is basically a little bit of acceptance commitment therapy, like they taught in Mind Therapy, whatever it was called. Acceptance, I can't remember the name of the episode, sorry, but where they basically, Stevani is trying to move on from the pain she caused. And that message is like focusing on the now, accepting your loss, or accepting and understanding, acknowledging your grief, not accepting, acknowledging your grief, and focusing, allowing yourself to focus back on the now. And in this case, he's saying, geez, this is beautiful, everything around us. I've got my family, I've got, these wonderful people who love me so much all around me, and this beautiful scenery out in a beautiful night sky, and why don't I have a look at this? And he just sort of comes back to the present. He comes back to the present and says, you guys are always here for me, thank you so much. And it's a beautiful moment, and I really like that at the end of Gemification. Overall, just a great episode. I'm sorry, I went off on a tangent there. I just really wanted to talk about that part. Back to the kindergarten. So basically in this one, Peridot is still grieving very bad, like she's really, really struggling. And this is exactly what happens. Again, all these episodes are so relatable, and I know they're not covering amazing ground like I want them to. Like, I want them to go back to freaking Homeworld. But I love the fact that they are still so relatable in that we've all had this friend, or we've been this friend that's just been in a complete slump, and you've got to get him out of the house. You're just like, oh dude, you need some air, you need some fresh air. So Steven and Amethyst, I'm beginning to like Steven and Amethyst as a kind of adventure group more and more. My favorite character is normally Pearl, but that's starting to switch because Pearl less and less is filling the boots for Steven. She is less and less being someone to help him, a support to him. She's trying, but more and more she is unraveling the more and more the series goes on. And I've never really thought about that, but that's probably intentional, that we are almost seeing Pearl regress as the series goes on. Most characters in a series progress, but we're learning more and more about, I guess regress is the wrong word, but she's becoming more and more vulnerable, more and more fragile the more the series goes on. And that is not unrealistic, that is... that's also realistic. Love this series. I'm sorry. And yeah, she's very much becoming a character who seemed very much kind of a mother figure to Steven before, but is becoming more and more vulnerable. And I like her for that. No, I do like her for that still. Maybe that's why she is still my favorite character, because she has shown so much character. And we've gotten a lot of hints of Garnet's character as the series goes on, but I think Pearl is the most developed of the characters. Arguably Amethyst, because she's had so many episodes as well. But I think, yeah, Amethyst, I love the fact that she is she's becoming the main support for Steven, and I really think that's interesting. She's a support for Greg and a support for Steven, and I used to think she was like the most immature of the gems, but in a way she's the most mature because she is the one that is always there for both the humans. In a way she's the one who understands the humans the best. Sorry, I'm having so many revelations as I'm talking about this beautiful series. But anyway, this is actually the episode I've watched the most because I've watched it about 3 or 4 times in the last few days when I was on and stuff, and like I've just been like, I love the fact that it is going over again the grieving process and just getting Paragon out of the house, and we're watching these friends try and rebuild something. It's not specifically aiming at the problems, addressing, saying, Paragon until the end doesn't say I'm actually grieving, but it's we know that's what's happening here. As they're gardening, as they're trying to rebuild the kindergarten, they're seeing this new life in it, and you can tell what's under the surface, what's going on here, but it isn't said, and I think that's beautiful when something isn't said. And I can rewatch this episode and just like, God, this is nice. This is another of those atmospheric episodes you can just tune out to. And it has a sad message at the end. A mixed message which I don't quite understand. I don't quite know where it's coming from. I kind of do and kind of don't. On an emotional level, I kind of understand. So basically, they can't rebuild kindergarten, Paragon is shattered, and again though, it comes back to, it's a bit like the message before, where they look at the scenery again out and say, oh, this is beautiful and I've got my friends beside me, and Paragon does the same thing to Steven. Yeah, she kind of acknowledges the grief and steps back into the moment and sees her loved ones and such. Crazy, it's almost cyclical. And yeah, so I really like that episode. That's probably my favorite episode of this bump of episodes we've just gotten. Beautiful scenery, and just love watching them rebuild the garden and fail and have to acknowledge that. It's a beautiful message, but a complex message at the same time. There's certain elements I don't understand of this message in that it is just completely unrebuildable here. But anyway, rather than me continually speculating, Sadie Killer. God, I must be going over time here, sorry, but there's so much to talk about in these episodes, so I'll try and keep going. Sadie Killer, I'm meh on. This is probably the episode I was most meh on, and it's probably my bias, because I watched Sadie Killer and I like Sadie okay. She's okay. I like her character more, but there was a lot of questions I had in this episode, like, she's constantly going on about how she hates her job and she works every day, and one employee in a donut shop is like, did they not think their employee was going to crack eventually and quit? Because at the end, she basically starts singing again, which is wonderful. My favorite part of the episode is it brings back to the fact that Sadie sings and she reignites that passion and that talent very sporadically and spontaneously, very organically. It is beautiful. I don't particularly like her singing, and it is kind of cringeworthy, but I think it's meant to be because it feels realistic. Like this is someone just singing off the bat, and it's kind of beautiful in that way. But still cringeworthy singing, but you know, more power to Sadie. And yeah, I was surprised that Sadie doesn't just say, I'm only available 1 or 2 days of the week or something, rather than outright quitting her job. And it really surprised me, because I was just like, yeah, because I don't know, could she at least try to say, I'm only available these days, and if they fired her, because some people probably say, well, they fire you if you're not available every day. At least try, rather than just saying, I outright quit. Just say, I'm sorry, I'm only available these days, take it or leave it. You know, stand up for yourself, Sadie. But I guess Sadie's character, this was a big step for her, because it was a big extreme step, because she gets kicked around a lot, and that's part of her character that's frustrating to watch, is that she was kicked around by laws, and is kicked around by her employers, and this was her taking her stand. And yeah, I acknowledge that. So I guess she had to quit the whole job. But realistically, she really should have just said, well, maybe I can just work a few days a week, because if she's been working at the donut shop that long, maybe she'd enjoy it more if she actually only worked a couple of days, you know? It's just, you gotta make a living. Anyway, yeah, so I'm okay with that episode. I love the fact that Steven joins a band and is doing other things away from Connie and moving along with his life. That's very beautiful. Yeah, so very much like that. It's okay episode, not my favorite, but it was an interesting one. Developed the characters a lot. So the final episode we've got in episode 10, Kevin Party. So this one, I don't know, when Kevin comes on the scene, I get that he's meant to be a cliche, but he's just such an underdeveloped, unrealistic cliche character. I don't know, maybe he's not cliche, maybe there are people like this, but I don't know, they're such a bore you forget about him. Anyway, yeah, I don't like Kevin's character, even though he's meant to be annoying. He feels so, I don't know, it feels like such an ego stroke, the whole thing about him. I can't fully put it into words, but I'm just not a fan of Kevin's character. And the way Steven and Connie interact with him as well, I don't really like. But he sets up the scene here, so he serves a purpose. So basically in this episode, this is where Steven and Connie come back together. We get the return to where we were. So Lion comes back, he's been hanging with Connie apparently. Connie's got this haircut, and it's again a realistic situation. This is another episode, you know, I kind of remember and say, oh, that so happens to everyone, where you see that ex, or who am I kidding? It's an ex. Obviously, it's an ex you see again. Like, it's not just a friend, but you see an ex again, and you just think, whoa, oh, there they are, holy crap. And you very much sort of just think, well, I think anyway, I'm just speaking of you as in not personally you, but general people, that from my perspective. You see the person, you're just like, oh, what do I say, what do I do? And you know, try and do these things, and realistically, they are often thinking the exact same thing. Well, if you both love each other, they're thinking the exact same thing. Oh, holy crap, it's this person. And it's very realistically portrayed, and I love the fact that they basically don't do the, oh, you should pick her up this way, do this, do that, and the way Kevin does it, who, you know, is so fake, and I like that he plays his character well there. And I like that they come together at the end and just say, oh, I missed you, and just honest with each other, and yeah, that's the way it should be, I think. So overall, I've just loved these episodes mostly. I'm very, very much saying, why have we not discussed these things? But I guess that's an intentional cliffhanger, but it's just like they've zapped from everyone's minds. They're such a secondary thought. And like, if they'd at least talked a little bit about it, you know, give it 30 seconds to say, oh, I just revived the dead, Pearl. That's kind of something. I didn't know I could do that. Oh, Steven, you did what? And like, wait, I guess he kind of tells Sadie he revives him, but whatever. You get my feeling. They don't really discuss it much, and that bugs me. Anyway, guys, I've rambled on far too long, but I've just wanted to talk about all this because, oh, I love this series, and I'll very much be chatting about the future ones as well. Let me know your thoughts on the series so far, like on this new Steven batch, because I've liked them, I'm always enjoying them, and even if it's not what I wanted to hear about, it is still so relatable and still likable. Loved it so far. Anyway, guys, thanks very much for watching. I'll talk to you later.